Thank you everybody for coming over, and so I'm going to introduce Hungate, who's going to talk to you about how you can evaluate your DevOps initiatives using a very interesting framework from the Atlassian Heart Association. So without giving too much details out, I'll pass it on to Anne.
Right, thank you. Welcome. You guys, I speak at a lot of conferences, and this just blows me away. Are you guys really impressed with the expo room and the app? I think this has been an incredible conference. So for the next 15 minutes, we're going to sail through this. The good news is there's no one else in this room afterwards, so if you have questions, come on up, and we'll continue the conversation. I'm going to talk a little fast because there's a lot of content, but I'm also going to invite you. There is a more detailed white paper on this topic, and when we get to the end, I'll tell you about that in case you're interested in reading more. So my name's Anne Hungate, and I've been working in technology way too long. Because the B-52s who are playing tomorrow night were popular when I was in college. So, in fact, a kid I was talking to last night, turns out I am older than his mother. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me, this is crazy. But I'm here to talk to you today. I work a lot with teams who are trying to accelerate their DevOps journey. And DevOps isn't an option, you guys, it's a necessity. DevOps is a compression and automation of the software delivery supply chain because all of our brands have become digital. Everything is digital. When I started in IT a long time ago, we were relegated to the basement. Literally, I am not joking. Any of you guys remember sitting in the basement? Right, so there were 10 of us who shared the space of maybe where 2 janitors had kept their cleaning equipment. That's how important we were to the business. Fast forward 30 years, and before you buy a product, where do you go? Right? You go to your phone and you take a look at how many stars they have or what other people have said. We see every day more and more brick and mortar stores closing because of the retail apocalypse. The retail apocalypse has started because the way we interact with our technology has changed. This is all enabled by DevOps, and all of you in here are DevOps advocates and proponents. And I want to help you today use your Atlassian suite, specifically your JIRA, to tell a better story, to get the funding you need to keep accelerating your DevOps initiatives. Make sense? Well, our topic today is called DevOps Starts by Knowing Your Numbers, and this was inspired because has anybody ever heard of the Go Red for Women campaign? Heart disease is the #1 killer of women in the United States. So Macy's and the American Heart Association came together and developed a campaign called Go Red for Women. And in most cities every year, there's a big luncheon and a lot of awareness and a fundraiser to help women become more aware of the signs. Well, I was at my friend is the chair in Raleigh, where I live, and I was sitting at the Go Red for Women, it was almost a year ago, and they were talking about this Know Your Numbers, and I realized this is it's a great, elegant model that we can use as technology professionals. It's worked to help reduce the number of women who die from heart disease and heart attack. In fact, it's affected probably everyone. So, because anyone who gets their biometric screening at work, that's part of the Know Your Numbers platform. So I decided to take that to DevOps to help us be really specific. So when we leave here today, we're actually going to leave with an understanding of how to apply this model to you. So I wanted to first share with you a quick definition. So, I pulled that out. Well, anyway, so there's 3 things we're going to walk away with today. You're going to walk away knowing what your DevOps risk factors are. You're going to be able to answer, you're going to know what 5 questions are you need to answer, and you're going to know the 7 simple steps you need to take to accelerate DevOps in your organization. All right, with that, we got 11 minutes left. Let's start with knowing your numbers. So the American Heart Association offered us this model that said, we've got risk factors in life, and you need to know what they are. There are some you can control and some you can't control. Right? I have ridiculously light skin and freckles, and even though I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, I am still super prone to skin cancer. Right? That's just a risk factor I can't control, but what I can control is whether or not I get skin checks. So what we have the similar things for heart disease, right? You can't control your age, your heredity, right? Your genetics. Those are things you can't control. But what you can control is whether you eat oatmeal and meditate, right? Those are the two best things to really control your blood pressure. You can decide whether or not you're going to smoke. Well, decide. That's a whole nother topic for another talk. But again, the notion is the American Heart Association said we have risk factors that we need to know. Some we can control, some we can't. How does this translate to DevOps? Let me fly through those and put them all up there. There are things we can control as professionals. I had a really interesting case study earlier this year where a group, just hands down the most accelerated, elevated, insightful DevOps engineers I know, were getting amazing things done, but they were blowing up the rest of the organization. They had made enemies, they had alienated people, and they hadn't interacted with the larger enterprise. So their DevOps initiative wasn't taking off. It was staying localized to one team. When DevOps stays localized to one team, we can't accelerate, automate, and compress the software delivery supply chain. We need DevOps everywhere. So what can you control? What are your risk factors? You can control how you communicate and interact with other teams. You can control the tools you use. You can control the standards you use. But you can't control what your competitors are doing. You can't control regulations. You can't control consumer preferences. All of you in here are Atlassian customers. You've chosen to use these tools. And by knowing your numbers and by simplifying the way you use the tools, you're going to be able to really accelerate your DevOps. This is the heart of the presentation. Risk factors. Now we go to knowing your numbers. The American Heart Association offered us these basic numbers. I'm sure a lot of you get your blood drawn, right? At work, they have that everybody come and do your biometric screening. Well, I'll overshare here because we've got 8 minutes. I did my biometric screening for a 3rd year in a row and found out I was diabetic. I'm like, really? I exercise, I've been this same size pretty much since I was 14. No one in my family is, but I was. And so as a result, I switched to a plant-based diet. Cool. I knew my numbers, I did something about it, and within 10 weeks, I was back on track where I needed to be. That's what the essence is that you need to know these key numbers. I don't know exactly what the right numbers are for your organization when you're trying to accelerate DevOps, but I do know the key questions. And I know that most teams who are advocating DevOps aren't answering these key questions. If you want to get more buy-in, get funding, and extend your DevOps practices, then you need to be able to answer these key questions. Number one, what's most important to the business? I'm amazed at the number of people who don't know the applications that they're working on. How critical are they to the business, right? The second thing I've noticed is that a lot of organizations treat every project as number one. Well, we just got to get them all done. You're already bombarded. I'm going to do a little sidebar here. I was working with a group about a year ago, and amazingly conscientious, hardworking, great people. We did a survey. What they found is they were stepping on each other's toes, and we did a survey, and over 95% of the people felt like they were going out of their way to help other people. When they heard their work was a block or it was in the critical path, they were doing whatever they could. Yet, only 42% of the people felt like others were helping them, like other people cared. These guys were classic JIRA users. There's a huge dichotomy. If everybody thinks they're helping other people, but nobody feels like they're being helped, we've got a problem. We've got a problem with JIRA, and we've got a problem with prioritization. nobody knew what number one was. Everyone thought what they were working on was most important, and they weren't intentionally not helping. They just didn't know. So you've got to be able to answer. So when we helped them with adding prioritization into their JIRA and all of a sudden, everyone could see what was most important. So that's the second question you have to be able to answer. The third thing we found is that folks were spread across way too many projects and sometimes working on things they didn't want to work on. So if you want to accelerate your JIRA, if you want to accelerate your DevOps initiatives, you need to make sure that you have people working on the right work at the right time and doing the work they want to be doing. Don't be afraid to ask them, is this what you want to do? I understand if you're going to take this assignment right now, what do you want to do next? The fourth question you have to answer is, what's the long pole in the tent? Let's go back 25 years. I was managing my first program, and I had to, the first thing I did, and some of you who've been around as long as me know, I put in an order for my development and test environment. I didn't know the scope of the project. I didn't know the technology we're using. I didn't know anything. But I knew the long pole in the tent was building out environments. So getting the equipment built out, I knew it was going to be late coming in. It's going to be wrong versions. It was going to be configured incorrectly. And the beauty of DevOps is that when we started to get VMware in virtual environments, that long pole in the tent was knocked out of the way. And that has helped program and project delivery amazingly. When you're promoting your DevOps environments, what we're trying to do is automate where we have constraints, right? We want to automate the things that are keeping our projects from being successful. If you've increased the automation of builds, but you haven't increased deploys, I'm not sure it matters. If you've increased the number of automated unit tests that you run, but they're not hitting the critical path and they're not finding defects, I'm not sure it matters. So I want to make sure that when you do automation and you're promoting your DevOps, you look at what steps in your delivery process cost the most and take the longest. And the last piece, the last question you have to answer is, what piece of technical debt costs the most? Right? Not all debt is bad. Some debt you take on because it leverages and it lets you get to that next stage. Let's say you're a real estate investor and you take out a mortgage and the property value goes up. You end up being able to pay that debt with the increase in value. That's good debt. Bad debt is the guy that called me last week and let me know that as a small business owner, I qualified for a line of credit at a 35% rate. That's bad debt, very bad. So, but know that. And technical debt isn't just defects. I learned this at a DevOps meetup that the first time I gave this talk, some folks thought that moving bugs into production counted as debt. Could be debt, that's part of your debt. But debt is when you are using tools, techniques, and technologies that are not part of your reference architecture, that are not target architectures and technologies with your organization. So let's flip in the last minute here on this. There are some ways that you need to clean up your use and simplify your JIRA so you can answer these questions. And I'm not saying give away all those freedoms you've given your team. I'm saying there are a couple fields that need to be non-negotiable, right? They need to roll up. So be aware of excessive customization, you guys. Be aware of that. Too many user-defined fields, too many workflows, too many issue types. It's really hard to roll up and tell a story. Decide whether or not you need those issue types, because I'm going to go back. You've got to be able to answer these questions. And if you're relying on your JIRA and your Atlassian suite, then be mindful of how you've configured it. You've got to answer these questions. So let's hit the last slide, the 7 simple steps. The American Heart Association gave us 7 steps to reduce heart disease. And they worked, right? They worked. It worked for me. So what are the 7 steps that you can do to increase the likelihood of success of your DevOps initiatives? The first thing you have to do is measure and manage the health of your production assets. Do you know, are your systems operating the way they're supposed to? Are the customers interacting with them the way they need to? Are they generating the revenue they need to? Also, prioritize your projects. Everything isn't number one. Think of that story I told with the teams that thought they weren't helping each other. It was just a case of prioritization. Get that in your JIRA and make it visible. The third thing you need to do is know your workforce risk. Do you have people working on what they want to be working on in the right place at the right time? Fourth, pick a method. I know I hear Agile, Waterfall, Scrum, Comet. Just pick a method and get good at it. The only wrong answer to what method you use is all of them. Right? That's a bad answer, but pick one, get good at it. Know and manage your technical debt. You know, those of us who are married, we know that these debt conversations are usually the hardest to have in a marriage, but you do it anyway. It's the same at work. It's the same if you're trying to promote your DevOps. Have you got too many tools? Are they all, you have multiple tools doing the same thing? That's debt. The sixth thing is, and this is the most powerful one, and I know I've run over by 30 seconds, but you got to engage everyone. When I was a hardcore programmer and solution architect, and I decided I wanted to go into management. And my first big project, I was running a conference call, and at the time, I was just dating my husband. And I got off the call, and I was so jazzed. I mean, we had everybody moving. We'd flown through our agenda. We started on time. We finished on time. We got done what we needed to get done. And I was all excited, and my then boyfriend says to me, "I'd never want to work for you." Right? And I'm shocked and stunned, and it was my ego, right? It was my ego that and so when I caught my breath, I said to him, "Why? Why not? What did I do wrong?" He said, "You just sat on that call and told every single person what they need to do." I said, "That's my job. I'm the boss. I'm in management now." And he laughs at me. He's like, "Are you the only one on that call who went to college?" "No." "Are you the only one that call that cares?" "No." "Are you the only one getting paid?" I said, "No." He goes, "So what makes you think you have all the answers?" They all had answers. Your job as the boss is to make it possible for them to deliver the answers. And you just undermined all of them and made yourself the critical path. All right, that was pretty powerful. It sucked to hear, you guys. I'm not going to lie. It was the hardest piece of feedback I ever got, and the best. So when you want to, and so I'm saying this to you, clearly you're all interested in engaging and improving your organization because you're here, but ask everybody their opinions, because the right answer lives among the team. And the last thing you have to do is when you get these great answers from everyone, every single month, you got to stop and check in. Have an operations review. Go over, I'm going to go backwards. Go over these. Answer these 5 questions as a group every single month in the form of an ops review to make sure that you stay cohesive. So with that, I encourage you to simplify your JIRA, back off the customized fields, know the questions you need to answer, and configure your systems so you can answer them. I'd love to keep having this conversation, so I'm going to hang out up here. I also have a white paper on this called DevOps Starts by Knowing Your Numbers. And if you just Google that, it'll show up. It's on like Tech Beacon and O'Reilly, and it's on my website. So again, my name's Hungate, and I love Twitter followers. I love to have this conversation, and I thank you for your time.